gentlemen, we have called you together to inform you that we are going to overthrow the United States government. Do you still think that jet fuel brought down the World Trade Center? Does anybody else see a problem here?
We saw this plan. Actually, it was a study done by the Department of Defense about what the future battlefield would look like in 2050. I've thought about it all weekend. It's bothered me so much. I want to talk about it on Sunday. And I want to talk about it yesterday, but there's been so much news that we didn't have enough time to talk about. There's been a lot of news lately, especially over this weekend. We've had top scientists, very well-known scientists. This is not a conspiracy theory, folks. We've been talking about this for years. It was dismissed as a bunch of tin-foil hat conspiracy theory. We'd seen too many Terminator movies. Look, Elon Musk is funding millions of dollars because he's concerned about artificial intelligence being a runaway technology. We've got killer robot conferences popping up all over Europe. And of course, people are maybe starting to get concerned about what could happen with genetically altered humans. And of course, there's always the concern that these genetic modifications might get out of control and cause mass death in terms of bioweapons, because it's our own CDC, the Center for Disease Control, is actually the Center for Disease Propagation. These people, many of them, you'll see them wearing military uniforms, these people who work for the CDC. They are bringing in deadly bacteria. They're weaponizing the deadly bacteria. They call them select agents. Who are they selecting these agents for? When you combine that with genetics, is a very troubling scenario. And of course, they enhance them with gain of function to make them more deadly, easier to transmit. So we're going to look at how these trends are converging into the future battlefield. Killer robots and genetically engineered superhumans. Stay with us. It's an exciting show today. You know, we've made everybody so paranoid. Everybody is concerned about that. I guess I'm on yet another list because I'm going around trying to get fertilizer for spirulina. But that's the kind of paranoid society we live in. But then when you talk to people about things that are real, about their cars getting hacked, about their phones getting hacked, about the government looking at everything they do. Look at this article here. 950 million Android phones can be hijacked by malicious text messages. It was just a couple of days ago we saw that all Chrysler Fiat vehicles could be hacked wirelessly. So maybe we should be concerned about that. Maybe we should be concerned at least about the future of these wireless cars if Android phones, which have been around for quite a while, it's a mature technology, again, they're still hacking them, putting in malicious text messages. So all they have to do is send you a text message and they can hack your phone. They can get control of your phone. And it was very simple for these hackers on Wired Magazine to take over that Jeep. Let me tell you something. I'm not going to be getting behind. There's no wheel to get behind. I'm not going to be getting into a self-driving car without a steering wheel, without brakes. I will ride a motorcycle. I'll ride a bicycle. I'll ride a skateboard. I'll get a horse, whatever. I'll walk. I'm not going to get in a self-driving car. Not ever. I mean, look at what we've seen in the past with people who have, in several cases, blindly followed Google directions or Apple Maps directions or, you know, some of these computer mapping programs, follow it right into the water, follow it down a trail and get stuck in the woods and die or nearly die. Or in some cases, they went around all the signs, all the warning signs that told them, this road is closed, the bridge is out, don't go any further. And it's like, but my computer program tells me to go ahead. So they keep driving. They go around, weave around all the signs that are there for humans because they trust the computer so much, and they drive off the bridge. There's a literal case of that, literally. A man and his wife, she died. He survived. But he kept driving and drove right off of the bridge. You know, it's a perfect allegory for where we're going with these self-driving cars. People don't understand the imminent danger. And they don't understand where this is leading. They don't understand that this is a means to take over your control of your transportation, to control your movements. Understand that the interstate system was created for military purposes. That's why Hitler created it. Before the war, Eisenhower had written a small book about how difficult it was for him to take a group of military vehicles from one point in the Northeast to another point in the Northeast. And then when he saw the Autobahn in Germany, part of World War II, it's like, we got to do that. And it was military primarily. Of course, there's been civilian use for it all this time, but that's primarily why they built the Autobahn and the interstate system here. Control of transportation is a main means of controlling a country, politically, militarily, physical control. This is why we do not want to have the government controlling each and every vehicle. They may be driven by computers, but they're going to be controlled by government, a government that can restrict your movement for any arbitrary purpose. That's the bigger picture. The immediate danger is that it's going to drive you into a ditch or drive you off of a bridge or have some kind of a software error. I mean, who would think that a computer would have a software error? We're only supposed to worry about human drivers, not about human programmers. I've seen plenty of human programmers making errors. I used to be a programmer myself. I made plenty of errors. I would never trust a car that was driven by a program that I wrote, okay? And I'm not going to trust a program that's driven by something that somebody else wrote. We ought to be concerned about that. But it's just like the situation that we see with guns, the situation we see with them looking at our emails. People can't see the long-term picture. They can't see how this is going to broaden out. And so they understand, some people are starting to understand the need for individual protection for firearms, but they don't understand the danger that gun control presents to the population. Of course, we have done many discussions and videos about that here at InfoWars. When I first got here, we did a video called Democide, talking about the history of how gun control has preceded massive control, mass murder by the government called democide. Of course, it enables it. So people don't understand that. And we're going to talk later in this program about a couple of emerging trends. Of course, we've had a lot of news in the last few days about genetics. Of course, we're told the good side of the genetics, and every technology has good and bad sides. How do we control that? How do we control robotics, for example, so that we don't have killer robots? That's been in the news a lot. And then, of course, there was a story at the end of last week on Friday. There was a release of a Department of Defense conference where they were looking at future war, the battlefield of 2050, 35 years in the future. What does that battlefield look like? It looks like your worst nightmare. You cannot even believe the scenario that they have proposed here. To give you a quick overview, and we're going to talk about this at the bottom of the hour in detail, because it is a convergence of these two trends of genetic modification and of robotics and AI. And they're going to converge these. They're going to push it. It's going to be an arms race. That's what everybody is concerned about with killer robots, is the arms race aspect of this. I've got to build it before the other guy builds it. And we push and we push and we push. We already spend more than every other country in the world on defense. Every other country in the world combined on defense, we spend more. We are creating the threats. Then we create the response, the counter to the threat. Then we create the counter to the threat. What is this for? We're multiplying death and suffering. The only people profiting from it are the military-industrial complex and the standing army. And we need to take a close look at where this is going, because in 10 years, it's going to be too late to stop this. It may already be too late to stop this. We need to understand where this is going. So we're going to talk about these converging trends of genetics and killer robots, because the battlefield of 2050 is going to be filled with killer robots and superhuman, genetically modified warriors. These are not going to be Captain America. These are going to be Winter Soldiers, because they are going to get their hooks into their minds as well. We're going to create a super elite group of cyborgs who have implants in them, who have been genetically modified to withstand deprivation, to be super strong, to have equipment themselves. But for the most part, they want to make sure that these killer robots will be able to operate so quickly that they don't even want the enhanced humans to control them. This is called plausible deniability, or an alibi, depending on which killers you're talking to. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Now we've got an article up today at InfoWars. A university professor says that Ebola is genetically modified, a lab-made virus. And I want to ask you, if that sounds like a conspiracy theory to you, think about the fact that Tulane University was involved in an accident with Burkholderia pseudomallii, a deadly bacteria that was brought in the United States, not indigenous here, very small area of the world where it was found, really only 2 countries in the world where it was found. They brought it in here to make a weapon out of it. They were messing with it at Tulane's National Primate Research Lab, and it got out of the biolevel safety, it was 3 or 4 lab, got into the wild. It got into the 500 acres there. They had a scientist, multiple agencies were there. One of them then tested positive for Burkholderia pseudomallii. It's in the wild there now. Thank you, CDC. So it escaped. They still don't have an explanation for how it got out, in spite of many investigation teams there. We know that Tulane, same university, was involved in the Tuskegee experiments, deliberately giving syphilis to black people, telling some of them that they were getting treatments that already had syphilis and not giving them treatments. So we know that they're ethically capable of it. We know that they can have mistakes. And we know that at the time that we had this latest outbreak of Ebola in Sierra Leone, that Tulane University had a laboratory there working on hemorrhagic fevers. The Sierra Leone government believed that they were responsible. The Sierra Leone government threw them out. So I have to ask you, do you think that our government, do you think a government that funds abortion is morally capable of releasing as a test pathogens? You don't even have to take that as a theory. We've seen it happen in San Francisco. They've released tests in the New York subways and the Boston subways. They say they were benign. We don't know. We don't know what our government is doing to us. They've lied to soldiers about the effects of things that they've exposed them to, nuclear weapons tests. Then we have Elon Musk and Stephen Hawking and Steve Wozniak in the last couple of days saying, say no to Skynet. They call for an artificial intelligence weapons ban. And of course, there's many different aspects about this. There's a concern amongst many people like Hugo de Garis that we've talked about that generalized artificial intelligence may in fact recreate the Terminator scenario. This is not life imitating art. Understand that Hollywood is given these scenarios by people who are doing the research. They're given scenarios by the CIA. They're given research by the Department of Defense. They want to get you accustomed to the future. They want you to see all of the horror that they are planning. And then they want to wrap it up at the bottom with a happy ending so you don't get too freaked out and do anything about it. They just want you to get accustomed to it. They want to move the Overton window. That's what they're doing with these movies. So we see many people coming out pointing out that this is a problem. We have the campaign to stop killer robots that is going on in the UK. Now let's go to where these converge. Not only the automated, when I talk about killer robots, let me explain that. These are drones, these are machines, they're planes, they're tanks. There may be devices like you've seen DARPA funding that look like 4-legged animals with knees going the wrong ways, running over all kinds of terrain. Weaponized and able to kill without human intervention. Because you can wipe out a lot of people with plausible deniability if you release one of these things and say it was just the software. Stay with us when we come back. I'm going to show you how this all ties together in the Pentagon's vision of the future. Now, getting back to these trends, what the Pentagon has done is they've looked at these trends like we've been talking about, things that have really erupted in the news lately. A lot of people very concerned. Elon Musk, Stephen Hawking, Steve Wozniak, all people concerned like Noel Sharkey and others that we talked to, Hugo de Garis, all concerned that artificial intelligence is getting out of control. Concerned about an arms race where you have autonomous killing machines that make their decisions without human input. It's just send them out and let them start killing in an area. And let me describe to you what this battlefield is going to look like, because it's not only the killer robots, which are the predominant factor there, but in the Pentagon's vision of the future, they also see augmented, elitist, cyborg superhumans, genetically modified people with implants connected to some of these robots, although most of them will be operating autonomously. This is a report that came out from the Pentagon visualizing tactical ground battlefield in the year 2050. This is a report that actually was picked up. It came out of the U.S. Army Research Lab. It was picked up by a Australian source. We picked it up from them. not much coverage in the U.S. press. Let me give you the table of contents here. First of all, they broke it down into two areas. One of them is seeing, communicating, understanding, decision-making. The other one is actually the fighting aspect of it. Here's some of the topics in the seeing, communicating, understanding area. Let me ask if some of these sound familiar, if they sound like what we've been talking about with the Jade Helm programming with the special forces. Augmented humans, then automated decision-making and autonomous processes. Misinformation as a weapon? Yeah, that's what special forces and unconventional warfare are about. Misinformation as a weapon. Micro-targeting. That's what geospatial intelligence, human domain analytics, activity-based intelligence, that's what that is about, micro-targeting individuals. Cognitive modeling of the opponent, and so forth. When we go to the actual fighting, listen to what they have. Ubiquitous robots. In other words, on the battlefield, robots are everywhere. Most of them killer robots making their own decisions. They work in swarms. As my son Lance said, nothing good ever comes in a swarm. Superhumans, directed energy weapons. That's things like laser beams. Force fields. Force fields. They're already working on them, folks. Other things like invisibility cloaks. It is a nightmare scenario. I don't have time to go into all of this, but we have to, as a people, come to grips with an out-of-control, militarized industrial complex, a standing army, and stop this before it gets to this nightmare scenario. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
You still think that jet fuel brought down the World Trade Center? Does anybody else see a problem here? If the government has nothing to hide, why are they so afraid to answer a few questions? This story does not add up.